Hey guys, how's it going? I'm Travis Mortz with the Forest Hill Film Lab, and I know it's been actually like a couple months since I put a video out. Um, Long story short, I've been really busy lately. A few months ago, I went on a trip to Yellowstone, which is the last thing I talked about when I was explaining on why you should shoot film while you're on vacation. When I got back from that trip, I did film a video in my new camper, and what had happened was I was an idiot and I didn't focus. I didn't focus the lens correctly, so I had filmed a whole video that was soft focus, and at that point it was kind of hard for me to get the motivation to go back out there and film the same video twice, so I never got around to remaking it. So as a result, it's been a little bit of time since I made a video. So today what I want to talk to you guys about is I guess kind of what's been up with me. Usually I like to keep my videos focused on photography, techniques, things like that. But like I said, with it being so much time in between, I didn't want to just come back after a few months and just talk about, composition or something like I did. So I'm actually going to show you guys, I'm going to update you guys on all of my travels lately, starting with my trip to Yellowstone, and then I'll also talk to you guys about my trip to Yosemite. I figured it was a pretty cool video since I've been to two of the largest national parks, the most popular national parks in the country. I figured I would talk with you guys and share some photos. So that's pretty much what this video is going to be about. Kind of just sharing some photos from my trip, some stories along the way, and I hope you guys enjoy it. Alrighty, so back in September, I planned on going on a trip to Yellowstone National Park, and I've been wanting to make this trip for a few years now, and Kelly and I finally decided it was time to do it. It was time to make the trip out to Yellowstone and see what it's got to offer. So we planned to go from California through Nevada, and for some reason we decided that we wanted to go through Salt Lake City. We thought that maybe adding that extra state of Utah would make the trip a little bit more interesting. So we went California, Nevada, through Utah, up through Idaho, into Wyoming, and then when we came out of the park, we went actually through Montana a little bit, back down through Idaho, through the top of Nevada, and back home. So basically a big old loop. We started our trip on a Sunday. We got a really late start in the day, so by the time we were done driving for the night, we made it to Wells, Nevada, which is it's just a little town near the border, a couple hundred, maybe 100 miles from the border between Nevada and Utah. And so we camped there for the night, and this was with my truck and camper on the back. I had a cab over camper. It had a full-size bed up top. We had a toilet, a sink, a kitchen, refrigerator, pretty much everything we needed to survive on the road for a week or so. And I'd done this kind of trip before where I lived in my camper for a week or two, so I was very comfortable with doing this. And we brought the baby with us. My truck was only 3 seats, and my daughter needed to go to school, so she stayed home and went to school. But we brought the baby with us, so it was me, Kelly, and the baby. So the next day was Monday. And really, this was like the start of our trip. This is really where it all kind of started, where it began, because the first day was just driving, getting groceries, taking our time, and we didn't really do anything. So Monday, we decided we were going to start our day off in the Salt Flats, the Bonneville Salt Flats, and make our way to Salt Lake and just basically see how far we can make it that day. We planned on camping in Salt Lake because, the amount of time it took us to get there or whatever ended up being the whole day. So we spent the morning in the Bonneville Salt Flats. This is one of my favorite places on the trip just because it's so unique. There's really nowhere else in the world like it. Just completely white salt flats, and there was actually some storms ahead, before our arrival, so some parts of the salt flats were like a big old puddle of water, which made for excellent reflections and things like that. And I'm probably just going to show you guys some photos along the way while I talk to kind of just illustrate what I'm talking about, and then also it'll make it so you guys can see a bunch of photos while I'm talking. So, the Bonneville Salt Flats, check it out. Really awesome. So then, later in the day, probably like 2 o'clock, we decided to, hit the road and make our way to Salt Lake. And what happened was, as we were coming into Salt Lake, it was rush hour traffic. The whole drive from Reno to Salt Lake City, there's no big cities. There's no traffic. There's no, interchanges between highways. It's just a straight lonely road. So right when we get into Salt Lake City, it was heavy traffic, and I slam on my brakes. I didn't really slam on my brakes, but I come to a complete stop, at the traffic, and we actually had to get off at the next exit to go to where we were planning on camping that night. So I come to a stop in the traffic, and I was stopped for maybe 5 or 10 seconds. And right when I let my foot off the brake, we just get slammed into from behind. My head goes back. I hit my head on the window behind my behind me because it's a single cab truck. So I hit my head like this. Kelly hit her head on the side window. The baby was sleeping. He got jolted awake. And so I got hit, and I rolled over to the side, and I looked out of my driver's side door just to see mayhem behind me on the freeway. There was two other cars involved. Cars were swerving everywhere to avoid the wreck. We were in like the third lane in the center of the freeway, and all I see is this white car with the hood folded up over the windshield. And I tell Kelly, someone might be really hurt back there. I gotta go check it out. So I jump out of the car. She starts calling 911, and I go to check on this lady, and I'm kind of apprehensively walking up because I wasn't really sure what I was walking up on. And thankfully, she climbed out of her car on her own free will, and she was okay. I guess what had happened was someone swerved in front of her. She couldn't stop in time. She slammed into me, and then someone rear-ended her as well. So needless to say, I was pretty bummed. My camper got completely destroyed. When she made impact, she hit my sewer tank, so there was like sewage water all over her car, leaking all over the freeway. The whole underside of my truck got folded under. All of the stuff in our camper got knocked out. Like the eggs fell out of our fridge. Every single drawer fell out. All of our belongings were in the floor of the camper. There's sewage on the floor of the camper. There's food on the floor. It was an absolute disaster. My propane tank was hanging out of the side by the hose. It was horrible. So her car was totaled. The car behind hers was totaled. They both got towed away. My truck, however, was still running. So, I got rear-ended, but none of the driving components were in the back. So I was able to just roll away, despite how damaged my truck was. And the irony of all of it is that my tags were expired because this is my grandfather's truck I inherited. So in this whole accident, I also got written a ticket for bad tags, which was just kind of insult to injury. So anyways, that night, we didn't know what the hell to do. We were thinking, we got to turn home. Our trip's over. It was day one of our trip, and we thought that, we had to turn around. So Kelly was a little shooken up. We decided to get in and out for the night so we didn't have to do any cooking. We had to get the fridge running again. We ended up staying outside of some amusement park in Salt Lake, which was not our plan. We stayed in some amusement park RV parking spot. Kind of camped out there for the night. So we talked about what we were going to do, and I decided that if I was going to have to drive 10 hours back home to California with my broken, totaled truck, then there's no point in us not continuing our trip. If I had to drive 10 hours just to get home, we might as well drive 10 hours further and just keep the trip going. So we no longer had a bathroom. That was out of commission. We managed to salvage everything else. None of the cabinets closed the right way. Immediately after the accident, my camper was so tweaked that the aluminum siding started falling off of it. So I had to go to Home Depot and tape up the whole side. It was a disaster. Hold on, I gotta change that 1 second. Sorry about that. So, where was I? So the next day we woke up in Salt Lake City and we decided to continue our trip. So we made our way through Utah into Idaho. And, we did go to Yellowstone, but the main point of our trip was actually to go to the Grand Tetons. Ever since seeing Ansel Adams' photos of the Grand Tetons, I always wanted to go visit that mountain range. There was something about that mountain range that really got me excited. So that was really our number one destination, was to go to the Grand Tetons. But it just so happens that the Grand Tetons are pretty much connected to Yellowstone, so we had to go to Yellowstone as well. So we made it to the Grand Tetons, Jackson Hole, Wyoming, and it was amazing. It was so beautiful. We camped in the valley right outside that very famous barn that everybody shoots in front of the Tetons. And when we woke up in the morning, there was just a ton of photographers out there. I don't mean to say what kind of cameras they were shooting, but they were all shooting cameras with rechargeable batteries. So there's tons of them out there, like with big old freaking tripods and huge zoom lenses and like 1,000 like graduated neutral density filters. They were out there in full force. So I decided that I actually wasn't going to shoot any photos of that iconic barn because everybody else was shooting that barn and nothing about it excited me. So I decided to actually, on that same row is a couple other barns and like an old house that I actually hadn't seen any photos of up until now. So I focused my time on that, shot a few photos at sunrise. When I was walking back to my car, I had my tripod with my 4x5 on it, and I had my Hasselblad over my shoulder. And as I was walking back, I walked in front of the iconic barn because that's where the pathway was. And I heard some guy yell at me, hurry up or move it or something like that, like just rushing me to get out of his shot because he needed to take 10 or 12 more, I guess. But I found that pretty funny. I don't know. I just don't know how exciting it could be shooting a subject with 25 or 30 other people pointing at the same thing. For me, that takes away a lot of the magic of the photograph when I know that I'm not the only person making it. So I was really satisfied with the photos I got there. And we stayed 2 nights in the Tetons and made our way to Yellowstone. And so we got into Yellowstone. And the first thing we did, we were like, let's go see Old Faithful. Let's go get it out of the way so we can do whatever we want after that. So we go to see Old Faithful. It's like this amazing geyser. And, you know, Yellowstone was a little more commercialized than I would have liked to anticipate. It was very, very commercialized. Like, Yosemite is pretty commercialized, but Yellowstone felt even more so. Like, the parking lot outside of the Old Faithful was, like, huge. Like, Six Flags size parking lot, like a football stadium size parking lot outside of Old Faithful. There was like a wood walkway around the whole thing. There was like frozen yogurt. There's like a building right behind Old Faithful where you can go get frozen yogurt. So I obviously partaked in that, but I'm like sitting there eating frozen yogurt waiting for this thing, and I don't know, nothing about it really felt like I was in a national park doing anything outdoorsy. So that kind of bummed me out. But after that, we decided to go on our own path, and we were driving, and we saw some hot springs off in the distance, just right on the side of the road, like kind of just like steaming out of the ground. And there's Yellowstone Lake in the background. It was absolutely gorgeous, and the photographer in me couldn't resist. So we went down there, and we got super close to these hot springs. This wasn't like one of the attractions there. It was just some random hot springs. They were super gorgeous, like yellow and gold and green and blue and all different colors, and like bubbling water coming out of the ground. And Kelly and I went down there, and we were shooting all kinds of stuff, and we got back to the truck and didn't think much of it. We were just pretty excited about all the cool photos we just took. And then we went to the next spot, which was a popular geyser spot, another parking lot, you know, signs and all that. And the sign said, don't get near the geysers. They could be acidic, so acidic that they can melt your boots off, and it's like super dangerous to be close to them. So we were like, oh, like we didn't really know that when we were just at these other ones. So that night Kelly did some research and found out that like tons of people have died at Yellowstone by getting close to these geysers, and like so much so that like one time a guy fell into a geyser, like just he was like with his sister or something, and he fell in. She went to go get help, and when they came back to find him, he was gone. Like his body had disintegrated in the acidic water. And they also said that like the ground right near the edge of the whatever you're looking at, the geyser, is like super thin crust, and at any moment could just break through and just become a geyser. So long story short, don't do what we did. That was terrifying after the fact, to find out how close to danger we were when we were just down there, you know, taking pictures. I guess my lesson for that is like, don't let your camera take over, you know. Basically, like I saw these geysers and my camera just dragged me out there and I couldn't resist. And sometimes you have to think about what you're doing, and sometimes you have to think about why this fence might be here or whatnot. And so that was kind of a crazy experience for us. After the fact, we realized how close to danger we were, and that was pretty sketchy. We did get some cool photos out of it. I'll show you guys, but yeah, that was one of the crazier parts of our trip. Kelly said that you couldn't pay her to go do that again, so it truly was a once-in-a-lifetime experience. After Yellowstone, I don't know, like I said, it was very commercialized, so we kind of just made our way out of there. We didn't have too much trouble leaving. And we made our way back through Idaho, which, let me tell you guys, is beautiful if you ever have the chance to go through Idaho and take your time and kind of look at stuff. The fall colors were absolutely phenomenal. We went and checked out some river spots, and we camped in this town in the back of a elementary school. I found like this elementary school, and so we parked in the back of it, so I was able to plug my camper into power, and so we had like power overnight, so that was pretty cool. And then we basically just spent some time in Idaho seeing the towns, taking pictures, and then the last day we decided to just kind of make a long strike home. I think I drove for like 13 hours to get home that last day. We were feeling a little homesick. The truck was pretty beat up. So anyways, after I got back home, I took my truck in to the auto shop, and the guy was like, I have no idea how you drove home from Utah like this. I was like, I didn't drive home from Utah. I drove 1,400 miles after Utah. He's like, I don't even know how you kept the truck in between the lines because the frame was so bent out of whack. Long story short, my truck was totaled. My camper was completely totaled. So the insurance company ended up buying both of those from me. So it was the last trip in my camper, which was pretty sad. Mostly because I inherited my truck from my grandfather, and I really wasn't ready to let it go. So that kind of sucked. It made the trip a little bit more memorable because it was the last trip in the camper. And so I decided that I wanted to buy, with the money, I wanted to buy a replacement for the camper, but I figured I would upgrade. So I bought myself a 1978 Dodge Beaver. It's this 23.5-foot motorhome. I got it from a guy in Reno, and you take a look. I'll show you guys a couple pictures of it. It's freaking awesome though. It's got a shower inside. It's got bunk beds in the back. It's got a full-size fridge, stove, oven, obviously a flushing toilet, a living room, a full-size bed up top, and it's got 50,000 miles on it. So anyways, I'm super excited. So we decided that we needed to kind of take the Beaver out on her maiden voyage, take her on a trip. That was when I made my last video. I was making basically a video to sum up this trip and then tell you guys about my Yosemite trip. Like I said, it was all out of focus and I just couldn't use it. So that kind of got me caught up to the Yosemite trip. So we loaded up the Beaver. We loaded up both kids this time. We had some friends that we were going to meet out there, and we took the Beaver out to Yosemite, and that was an awesome trip. We didn't get as much photography done as I'd liked, but I'd been to Yosemite so many times that I was able to kind of swallow that and deal with the fact that we were mostly just hanging out and seeing the sights a little bit and didn't spend too much time behind the camera. I met up with a guy named Andrew Upchurch. He's a resident of Yosemite. He's been living there for 2.5 years, and he's an all film photographer, and he's really like getting people stoked about film photography in the Yosemite Valley, which I think is really, really awesome. So I went out there and met up with him. We hung out a few nights. I gave him some, rare rolls of film since he's out there in the middle of nowhere. And yeah, go check him out. It's Andrew M. Upchurch on Instagram. He's got some really awesome stuff. He's a rock climber, and his photographs are excellent. So that's the kind of photographs I really like to see from Yosemite. It's like lifestyle, but in Yosemite, rather than like the standard half-dome photo and all that stuff that I take when I go. So yeah, I want to share with you guys some photos from my Yosemite trip. It was awesome being able to take my kids out there for the first time. And I realized that while I was out there, the focus of my photography ended up being my family more so than the park itself. And I really kind of like that. I do enjoy having a meaningful subject in such an awesome place, because it gives you a little bit more variety. You're not just shooting the mountains all damn day. You get to shoot your friends and your family in the mountains, which obviously makes for more interesting photos. Anyways, after that, we came home, and I've just been pretty busy lately. The film lab is doing good. I'm still getting orders, so I really appreciate you guys for that. Thank you so much for the support. It looks like my fixer's done. 1 second. Sorry about that. I'm back again. I just want to take this time actually to show you guys some more photos from my trips. I'm gonna start out with some photos from my Yellowstone trip through Utah and the Tetons and Yellowstone. I'll share with you guys some of those photos, and you can tell me what you think in the comments, and then I'll back those up with some Yosemite photos in just a minute. Welcome back. Now you had a chance to take a look at some of my Yellowstone photos. When I went out to Yellowstone, I really loaded up my cameras because I wasn't sure what I was going to come across. Some of the larger black and white photos were shot on 4x5. I shot Hasselblad, those are the square photos, and I also shot a good amount of 35mm while I was out there. Yeah, I brought with me mostly Fuji C200. I brought a couple rolls of Portra with me, but to be honest, the comparison between Portra and C200 is, it's pretty much dead on. I really feel like my photos with C200 sometimes are even more desirable than my Portra photos. The colors don't seem to be worse in any way. So I've just been shooting that a lot lately. And also as well, when I went to Yosemite, I really only shot a couple rolls of film while I was out in Yosemite because I've been there so many times now that I'm a little more careful about what I shoot. I'm a little pickier. And also this trip to Yosemite, it was kind of in between seasons. So it wasn't winter yet, so there wasn't snow and things like that. But it wasn't summer, so the colors were kind of muted and everything was kind of dead. There was some fall color, but not a whole lot. This trip to Yosemite wasn't terribly motivating. I personally like to get out there when the weather's bad. I like it when it's snowing. I like it when it's storming. I like low visibility. I like all that stuff about Yosemite. And this trip just didn't really have that. So we kind of just focused more on hanging out and enjoying our trip. But take a look at some of my Yosemite photos. I still have some 4x5 to develop that I've been slacking on. And any photos that you see of me were obviously shot by my girlfriend Kelly. She's an excellent photographer, so oftentimes when we go on a trip I end up liking her photos more than my own because I'm unbiased about her photos. Whereas with my own images I have that that underlying bias that all photographers have. Yeah, any photos you see of me from the last slideshow or from this one was shot by Kelly. And yeah, we had a couple good trips, and I'm happy to share them with you guys. So take a look. Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed some of those photos, and I hope that you guys enjoyed me kind of catching you up on what I've been doing. I've been getting a lot of messages and comments about making more videos, so thank you guys so much for being excited about my content. That really means a lot to me, and hopefully I'll get as excited as some of you guys are about it because I've been slacking a lot lately and I feel guilty about it. It's kind of hard being a YouTuber when you don't kind of put your all into it, and I've still yet to do that. I've still yet to go full bore. I try my hardest, but the biggest difficulty I have is coming up with ideas for videos that I think people will want to watch. I'm always wondered about you know, I'm always worried about how people are going to respond to my videos, so much so that I don't make them. So please, guys, comment below with any ideas for future videos that you'd like to see, and maybe I'll pick one of those ideas out of the comments and do one, because I really need to get back on this YouTube thing. And thank you guys so much for watching and checking out my videos and listening to my stories. And until next time, you guys, keep on shooting.